The Sacred Window is an
welcome to the
idea that
Sacred
we
Window
can all
podcast.
find ourselves in
My
need
name is
of
Christine
during
Debronette.
times of our
The
lives where
Sacred
we are
Window
tender,
refers to the
in need of
tender,
extra care,
magical,
and
and remarkable
transforming
weeks
our
following the
understanding
birth of a
self.
baby.
The
A birth
concepts of
giver
care
is
we give to new
forever
parents
changed.
can be applied to
Recognizing that this
ourselves
time is
in
too often
honor of
overlooked
ourselves,
and
to build
misunderstood in our
resilience
modern
and
culture,
grace in how
we're
we
setting
navigate
out to
this
be
life.
part of a voice for change and growth. We're growing awareness and broadening the reach of conscious postpartum care. Our podcast features friends and colleagues as interviewers. We're a loving community united by a common passion to change the paradigm of postpartum care to one that honors women, birth givers, babies, and families. We're glad you're here.
And I will never be the same again.
Hello, my name is Christine Eck, and I'm the director of the Center for Sacred Window Studies. And it is my great pleasure today to be interviewing Maranda Bower. Maranda is from Alaska, and for over a decade, Miranda's been working with women in her area and all around the country and beyond, working on postpartum support and creating some change, which is so desperately needed in our modern day culture. And Maranda, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to describe a little more what you do before we dive into our interview.
Oh, thank you so much. I am absolutely ecstatic to be here, Christine, and I have been following you for some time and just really honored to be in this place speaking to you and sharing all of this with you all. So again, I'm Maranda. I'm a postpartum bliss coach, and I have been supporting women through postpartum for many years. And to be honest, that's not how I started my journey. I was actually through the birth of my child, my very first, over 10 years ago, and really I had prepared everything for the birth. I had a home birth experience. It was wonderful. And I did all of the background information. I was a biology student at the time, so it was really pertinent to me to do all of the research and the things that I wanted to, avoid. Like I didn't want a cesarean. So I researched all of these things, but something was very much missing in my postpartum experience. I completely forgot about this time. And I noticed that so many other women did the same. And so my journey really began in that phase of my life, and trying to get rid of the postpartum depression and anxiety that I was experiencing, and speaking with others about their postpartum depression and anxiety and mood disorders, and just recognizing that there was so much more to this than meets the eye. And so that's where my journey began. So I have been teaching for many years now. I work with clients one-on-one, and helping them through their personal things, and their personal postpartum experiences, and really helping them kind of grab a hold of this sacred time and enjoy the experience as it is, while also encompassing the mother through a major growth transformation. And I feel like this is one of the biggest missing pieces, so to speak, in our culture today, is bringing that sacred piece into our postpartum experiences. And I'm sure you can relate to that very much.
Very much so. And I really appreciate the understanding that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard transition in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, with the right type of consciousness around it, that difficulty can sort of transform into this incredibly sacred, momentous time as well.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing to look at it in both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm so excited to hear your perspective on a few more of these things that I feel like when I talk to people who are also in this field, we can just go on and on and on with this resonance because it's such a blatant need in our culture. And so when we can connect with other people who are thinking the same things, it just helps me have my perspective even wider and grow further. So I'm so pleased to have your thoughts about everything to share with our audience. But I want to talk to you about something that you really enjoy talking about, which is, I mean, we all know that our culture carries a lot of misconceptions for postpartum and what we maybe should be doing or what it should be like after our babies are born. And I would love for you to talk a little further about this idea of cultural misconceptions around postpartum and what solutions we can find to sort of combat that.
Yeah, you know, cultural misconceptions, and on the top of our head, I'm sure all of us can come up with several different ones, right? We have these expectations to go back to work, where you have these expectations to do all of the things, right? Not only are you supposed to get back to your normal life and cook the food and do the dishes, you're also going to take care of the newborn, and you're going to do it in this appropriate way, right? Whatever that means for our culture. Sometimes that's breastfeeding, and sometimes that's formula feeding, and you know, all of these ideas that kind of come into our world. And we have these expectations, right? Not only from other people, but also from ourselves. And there's so many misconceptions that those things are built upon. You know, and one of those ideas is that life is going to return back to normal after we have a baby. Like, the only new thing here is going to have a baby. You know, there's no other understanding or appreciation for what just happened for a mother. You know, and we hear this often as professionals. It's not just the birth of a baby, it's also the birth of a mother. And helping a mother through that transition is so critical in our society, and that's something that we don't understand. A lot of women and a lot of people, our society as a whole, doesn't get it, right? And that has a lot to do with, again, what we want in our life and how we, you know, values, really. We value money. We value, you know, hard work. We value being busy. And so all of these things, you know, when you enter a newborn, those aren't the important things anymore. It shifts our reality. And I find that so many women get stuck in this place of, I have to do all of the things, and I can't do all of it. I can barely do one thing, right? I can barely go pee by myself. And then we get stuck in this place. And that is where we create this resistance. And that's where we don't allow ourselves to really grow, because of, you know, we're so busy trying to care for our baby that we don't have time to dive into anything else. We don't have time to dive into who we are as a mother now. You know, whether it's your first or your fifth, who you are changes deeply on a very fundamental level. And so it's very necessary to give a mother the time and space to go through this process and open herself up to that and really discover who she is, so that, you know, at 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, she's not coming back and saying, I don't know who I am anymore. Who is this person? You know, how often do we hear that? Yeah.
Well, I think that it can feel very uncomfortable for women to adopt that slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they're given permission, even when they know that this is the right path, this is the right pace, this is the right rhythm, it still is a bit of a shocker to be slow when we're so amazing at being efficient and making all these incredible things happen in our independent lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's definitely some important guidance that women can have in helping to not only be given permission to go slow, but like how to do that. And that is where the sacredness can come in, when they're sort of allowed to open and shown how to do that without feeling uncomfortable. Although I'm sure that discomfort can be an important part, real part of the journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And oftentimes too, it's supporting women and finding the right places to focus, right? If we're so busy focusing on the things that we can't do, then we forget about all of the things that we can do and all the things that we are currently doing, right? Because it's so like when you're in the moment, right? Time goes by so slow, but when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, that was like in a blink of an eye, you know? And giving women the opportunity to really focus on the important things, so that when she is ready to go a little bit faster and to pick up the speed, that she has built a solid foundation for that. And so a lot of my work is supporting women through that and giving them that focus on showing them how to rest, right? And making that a priority in their life. And how do you do that when you have multiple kids? Like, what does that look like? You know, how to eat in postpartum, that is huge. You know, to heal our bodies and build that foundation. How do we move our bodies? How do we connect with our partners, right? So that the foundational pieces are there. And then when we're ready to take off, when we're ready to take flight a little bit more, that those things are in place, and then we thrive in that. And so, you know, again, a lot of my work is that, but I also find that a lot of women don't get those opportunities because they don't know, right? You usually, how many of us come back into this space because we are here in this space and are listening to this podcast and this show because we had a kid and it, you know, postpartum threw us for a loop, or we have several and maybe are expecting another, right? And we're trying to get our ducks in a row because we know what to expect, that, you know, there's going to be a lot of things that we need to plan for and be present for, and how do we do this, right? The question, how do we do this? And so I find a lot of my clients come to me with the second or third and they're pregnant and they're asking those questions. All right, I've got to prepare. What do I do? What does this look like when you have, you know, 2 kids already or 3 kids already? Or they're 2.5 years postpartum and they don't feel very good in their bodies. They have a lot of lack of self-worth, right? They feel like, you know, they've got thyroid issues now and they've got gut health issues and they're exhausted, you know, to the core of their bones. And they're saying, what do I do? What did I do wrong? Nobody can help me. Like, where am I in this grand scheme? And what can I do? And so helping them through those significant points that I mentioned earlier, and learning how to sleep and reprogramming, because it's not sleep when your baby sleeps, right? Mm-hmm. It's not sleep training, right? It's not our babies that need training, it's us that need training. How to eat and how to create that that healthy body starting from within, right? You know, I talk a lot to my clients about the 6 sacred healing therapies, and, you know, again, connecting with your partner, because that's a really big space that we don't often, you know, we always hear marriages aren't the best after having a baby. And why is that, right? Because there's a lot of transition. So I mean, I can go on and on, obviously, but there's so many things. And it's so easy to get lost in all of those things.
There is. Yeah. And you mentioned something that really struck a chord with me, which is about thinking about the things that you can do. rather than the things that you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we bring it back to just spin it around, so we're looking at all of the choices that are available to us and what we want to do with the things that we have available to us. And that is magnificent. Like what can be done with the simplicity of your baby and your family and your partner and your quietude and your simple food and all of those very, very simple, accessible things in the moment. Really harnessing the healing within that is transformative.
And I really believe that once women experience that or get a glimpse of it, it becomes so much easier to be in that space and to live there in that space. But so often women don't get that support. They don't get the opportunity to really feel what it means to live in that moment and be nourished fully and to, be present for, what's going on in their body and the healing that's taken place, as well as for their baby, right? And so we don't normally feel that, and we don't really know what that means. And then it's so easy to get, taken away from the experience. But if we have that, if we know what it looks like and we have felt what it feels like, it becomes so much easier to be in that space for a lot longer.
Right.
And to enjoy it.
Right. And when people see other people experiencing that, say it's a sister, a friend, or a family member, by people taking the time before their baby arrives to plan and create space that they can really make this type of experience happen for them. Mm-hmm. And then those in their community get to witness that. That in itself is helping to spread the ability and to help. I think even just watching somebody can make it easier for someone to go into that space because they've seen it, even if they didn't feel it themselves.
Absolutely. And it brings about a level of healing for the person who maybe didn't experience that as well. I helped heal my mother through my own birth experiences. Like this is a generational thing. My mom had very traumatic birth experiences. And so witnessing me having a home birth for all four of mine was beyond healing for her. I mean, she talks about it all the time. She talks about my birth experiences often, and she shares them randomly with people. Oh, you're having a baby? You should have a home birth, which is great. But it's the healing on different levels. And I tell this with people that I mentor all the time who are wanting to learn about postpartum, that this is going to act as an invitation. You providing that for somebody else will be your invitation to heal yourself deeply, especially if you didn't have that opportunity. And you want to heal deeply. And the more that you are healed in your own experience postpartum and from birth, right? And all of those things, it doesn't matter if you're 10 or 15 or 20 years out, you have to have that healing to be able to offer it fully to somebody else. And by giving that, you're opening the gate for your own healing to happen.
It's really beautiful. Really beautiful. I would love to hear you talk a little bit about depression and anxiety and ways that this type of consciousness and postpartum care, but also like families setting themselves up for a solid, sacred postpartum window, how your understanding of postpartum anxiety and depression can be impacted by this.
Yeah. So just to share with you a little bit of background, I had extreme postpartum depression and anxiety with my first. I mean, extreme. I lost my home. I lost my partner. I had no job. Like I couldn't function. I was afraid that I was going to lose my child. that is how deep I was in my own postpartum depression and anxiety. So in no way am I, the things that I'm going to share with you are putting it down or not understanding. Like, I deeply understand what this means. So much so that actually I went on to have another baby after I felt very healed, but I ended up experiencing postpartum bipolar and postpartum rage, which is a real thing. So I have this, and then I've gone on to experience very blissful, very beautiful postpartum experiences. So I have the array of experiences, especially when it comes to mental health and disorders. So I'll start there, right? I have that knowledge, but so much of what we know about postpartum and about depression and anxiety, I feel, are very misleading. We don't study a lot about the postpartum body or even the pregnant body, right? It's very difficult to do. So in science terms, you're very limited on what you can do. And so when we do have science about postpartum, it's usually about two things: breastfeeding and postpartum depression and anxiety. And there's very wonderful studies out there on the topics here. However, they're so limited, and that they're very much focused on, brain only and how your brain functions. And we have this idea that postpartum depression, it just happens to you, right? And anxiety, it just happens to you. You have no control over it. And the only way out is through taking medication or seeking a help from a counselor. Those are your options. And I find that so disempowering, because as women, we come into this space, we just birthed a child. No matter how that baby came out of our body, we grew that baby, we nourished that baby and ourselves, and we gave birth, and now we have life. We are very powerful. We are very strong. And we shouldn't have to rely on other people for help, right? Like that's our innate feeling sometimes, right? We have this culture around, we have to do things by ourselves. And then we have these stigmas, right? Now, okay, I'm kind of getting off track. There's so many things to say, but really, when we come into this space, we have so much control over what happens on a certain level. We can make sure that we're eating properly by preparing those meals, right? One thing that studies haven't really gone into is how much nutrition plays a role in this. Another powerful thing is how much your thoughts play into this. You control so many of your thought process. You control a lot of your hormonal balances and imbalances, right? That comes from your thoughts, that comes from how you're sleeping, that comes through how you are eating. And when you have those three pieces in place, which usually requires support, right? Then we are able to move forward with a positive birth experience or a positive postpartum experience, right? And we're able to dive into those experiences. But what happens often is that we don't have the support. We don't have things like that set up, right? So many times I heard, oh, well, I'm going to have a meal train, and my church and my friends will take care of me, and then nobody delivers anything. And it's, we can't be in the space where we're waiting for others to do that for us. We have to be in the space where we are making the plans, where we know we are powerful, we know that we are worth it, and we are going to make what we have control over happen. And so in that sense, there are things that we have control over, right? We can prepare our own meals. We can make sure that we're set up to get enough rest. And then there's things that we don't control, right? There's things that, sometimes there's NICU babies, there's birth trauma, right? 1 in 3 women will experience birth trauma. How incredibly disheartening is that? And those, a lot of times we get stuck in a space that we call depression and anxiety because of those experiences. But they're not. It's trauma. It's PTSD. It's birth trauma. And to treat trauma, you treat it much differently than you would treat depression and anxiety, right? And so my idea, my thoughts, and all of the research that I have done over the last 10 years, especially when I was trying to get out of my own postpartum depression, and then working with other women, I've written books, I've spoken all over the world, universities, and all sorts of things. I've used to occasionally run women's retreats on birth and postpartum, and so, the whole premise of this is that there are many things that you can do to prevent postpartum depression and anxiety. So many things that you can do to prevent it. And that you are powerful and strong enough that you can move through this time period with support, right? One of the misconceptions is that in order to be strong and powerful, then you have to do it all by yourself. But I think the opposite is true, and that it takes somebody strong and powerful who feels worthy enough to ask for help. And how often I ask for help, right? And I don't feel disempowered by that experience to say, hey, you know what? I know that I need this in this moment. Will you help me do that? It's coming from a different place within. And anyway, I can go on. And I get off topic, as you can see. But, we have something within us to help us. And when we resist those things, when we resist that innate knowledge, when we resist the urge to ask for help, when we resist the experience that postpartum brings, then we start experiencing things like depression and anxiety. When we accept things as they are and we do what we need to do, right? It's not just think happy thoughts. It's not just eat well. It's not just sleep all the time, right? But that's a huge, significant part of those things. And so if we're able to do those things, it will dramatically change our postpartum experience, dramatically. And in my work, I will tell you, I have helped, I can't even tell you, I've worked with hundreds of women and getting them off, antidepressants within an 8-week period with their doctor's support. And yeah, kudos, like, yay, I think you're doing it. Like, that's huge. There's something to this when women are able to come to me and no longer feel rageful, no longer need medication. Like, this is something that unfortunately can't be studied very easily, right? Because postpartum, but there's something here that's really, really big, and we're on the cusp of transforming what we know of postpartum depression and anxiety through the things that we're teaching. And people like you are reaching out for women and teaching them, and me, and there's so many others in what we're doing for postpartum women, and it speaks volumes by the results.
Incredible. Right?
so interesting, how magnificent and powerful the mind is, and how you choose to look at a situation. And your story is really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sacred window is an idea that we can all find ourselves in need of during times of our lives where we are tender, in need of extra care, and transforming our understanding of self. The concepts of care we give to new parents can be applied to ourselves in honor of ourselves to build resilience and grace in how we navigate this life.
Yeah, I think it's really, it's so valuable for people to hear other people's stories. And it's a big commitment of mine in doing this work, is being able to bring out people's stories, because a lot of, I think, the trouble with postpartum depression and anxiety, and simply the isolation that we feel so often during that sacred window, is just that it's sort of not feeling strong and not feeling good and feeling like everyone else is doing better than I am. And I think that when we can really hear other stories, we can find some common ground, and we can use each other's stories to help support an understanding in the moment. So it's so valuable. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I hear so frequently in our society now is that you have to think positive thoughts, and it's all about positivity. And I want to say how powerful it is to think negative thoughts too. Like, they're there for a reason. Negative thoughts are not bad, right? We have this idea that positive equals good and negative equals bad. And that's not the case. A lot of times, these negative feelings that come up for us during postpartum or even beyond is an opportunity to heal and dive into the next conversation or the next topic or the next area of our life, right? Like, it's frustrating that I can't have my bath at this time every single night. Well, let's move it. Let's do something different. If that's fussy time for baby, then let's change something, and that's thinking on a smaller scale. But so often I hear, well, I had these negative thoughts, and now what am I going to do? Well, you're going to change it. What are those negative thoughts telling you? Like, they're an opportunity to learn, to grow, right? And so often postpartum has a tendency to bring up all of the things that we hadn't worked out before. Childhood problems, right? Relationship issues with our parents, with our spouse, our partner, right? Like, all of these things tend to come out in postpartum because it's such a raw and sacred time. And really, those feelings, all of those feelings, are incredible. They're pointing you to who you are as a person, and then they're inviting you to change and to grow. It's not something that's negative or positive or whatever. It's all a mix. There are cultures out there who believe that postpartum, as this sacred window, will bring us closer to God than in any other time in our life, and that only women who give birth are able to feel that closeness. I mean, how gorgeous is that? And it's because of this opportunity to heal our bodies so profoundly, deeply, right? On such a deep level, because of the things that come up, because of the things that you are able to change. Like, all the layers are being shed, right? And we're losing our identity, right? Like, we're shifting, we're changing who we are. Our definitions of love change. Our definitions of what it means to be in a relationship change, right? Or what it means to be a mother or a parent. or what it means to be responsible, like all of our definitions about life are changing, and who we are changed too. That layer is shed. I'm no longer this. I will tell you that in my first, after having the birth of my first, I realized that I associated motherhood with illness because I watched my mother be sick all the time. My mom was always sick, always with the flu, or always with a tummy issue, or constantly just not feeling well. So I thought that in order to be a mother, I had to be that sick too. And when I recognized that thought, when I realized that and was able to release that, my entire life changed. And I can't tell you how many moments that happens, in postpartum, because it's a lot, right? 4 kids later for myself, I could tell you I've had so many of those experiences, and helping my clients through those experiences as well. It's intense and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We just have to allow that to happen. And a lot of times that doesn't in the first 6 weeks. We don't know, we don't understand, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen later. 2 to 3 years down the road, I still find that the opportunity to heal is very strong. Given the opportunity, given the chance, given the tools. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that, allowing hardship, allowing negative thoughts, allowing difficulties to give us an opportunity to use our own inner wisdom to make something different in order to create more balance. And I think, that's one thing that I love so much about Ayurveda, is that it's using your inner wisdom, and instead of reaching out for other people to give you answers, you can look within, and what's inside will let you know what it needs, and then you can be able to make changes to help create a better sense of peace, better sense of balance.
Yes, absolutely. Beautifully said. Yeah.
I would love to, you've had so many experiences working with so many families and new parents, and I would love to hear about a transformational experience that you've had personally, or that you have witnessed somebody that you've worked with go through, that brought them from a place of feeling unwell to coming through that and feeling like they've reclaimed some inner peace within themselves.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of the work that I am doing with women, it's helping them get, better sleep, and it's helping them nourish their bodies at a very deep level. Those are the basic points. But really, it's bringing that inner knowing that they deserve this and that they are worthy, right? It goes right back to that. It's connecting them with their higher power through all of this, right? And so that's the deeper, side of things. And how we do that is through these other levels and these other channels that feel very, hands-on. They feel like, practical tools, right? But really they're diving very deep. And so I witness, I don't know if I've not had a client have a very big aha revelation experience, because that's just how the process works. This is how, I've developed this system over the last years, but last several years. So, the transformations that happen are, again, like getting off of, your antidepressant, or no longer having a thyroid issue, or no longer, having severe panic attacks when somebody else watches your child. And those are like, something that sounds really big, right? But there's other smaller, transformation pieces too, where, I had a mom tell me she had her second, we worked with her first, and she had her second, and she came back and said, my baby, I just want to tell you, he's, doing so amazing, and woke up in the middle of the night, and I was excited to nurse him. I was sitting next to him, and I realized that my excitement and my desire to cuddle him was because of what you shared with me and the transformation I went through with my first. Because never was excitement in the middle of the night or the desire to cuddle something that has ever, been experienced by her before. And so, I find that to be huge, right? Like that's a really big transformation for women. And I've seen women leave their job and get another job paying double, because they now have the idea and the understanding that they are worth so much more, right? To find, I've helped women save their marriage, right? Because they're no longer experiencing postpartum rage or depression and anxiety. I mean, how much those affect our life and the people in it is significant. We think it's so isolating. We think we're so alone in the experience, but really we're not. We are the center of our family, and everything that we are experiencing and feeling and thinking within gets passed to everybody else. And so, it's really a critical space. Like, we have to heal. And I will tell you, personally, learning, my first was probably my most difficult, and he has grown up with some challenges too, ADHD being one of them. And there's new studies that come out that has shown how women who've experienced postpartum depression and anxiety will change and alter the brain patterns of their infants. And so they are going on to develop ADHD. Like that is a reason for it. And it's crazy to think that we have that much power and that much control. And now we're seeing, it's crazy to see that all of these children who are coming with, ADHD and ADD and, a long list of, health issues in that regard. And you have to wonder, is this because of our society and not understanding postpartum and how to care for ourselves during this time, and therefore, experiencing the postpartum depression and anxiety and transforming the way that our babies develop? Is that an issue? So this is critical. This is a critical step in motherhood and a critical part of life. We have to be able to support women in this level, and we really have to heal ourselves going forward, and by doing so, healing our families. I mean, as I have healed through my experiences, I have also healed my children. My son has come leaps and bounds, like watching the layers come off, and to be able to do that for myself and for families, we've seen that too. And it's just an amazing experience. So there's lots of transformation, and it looks different for everybody, but there's always really big things that come out of giving women these practical tools and supporting them in this way and allowing them to blossom their own inner knowing, their own intuition, right? That's usually been suppressed for so long, and showing them how worthy and how powerful they are. It's all very deep stuff, right?
It is, and I love that. It's so true. It is truly a transformation for every single person.
with every single baby, even if you're having your second, third, fourth, beyond, it's a new transformation every single time. And I really love honoring that. And it's what I really love about what you do, Miranda, is how, yes, you have created, a program for women to really access what's already there, but that's just what it is. Like, it's really helping people to understand what they already possess, and really just helping to be their cheerleader and helping to be the illuminator for what is already so strongly there. Because I think that's so much of what we are going for as well, is just helping people to understand that that this is innate, that this is meant to be this way. And when culture can just shift itself to the way that it's designed to be, so much healing will happen on an individual, on a family level, on a community level, on a world level, on a universal level. So I really value the work that you've done so passionately and so diligently and so creatively. And I hope that all of our listeners will visit your website and all of your beautifully put together materials. And I just want to say thank you so much for spending this time with me. And do you have anything that you would like to share before we close?
Thank you. I am incredibly grateful to be here. And, it's such a fun journey to go on when you really dive in and get to experience, what postpartum is at that level.
Again, this has been Maranda Bower. And again, my name is Christine Eck from the Center for Sacred Window Studies. And thank you, Miranda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shanti, Shanti.
How can you bring something sacred to your current window of time? What do you have to offer to someone within their sacred window? We honor you for all you give and for who you are. Thank you for listening. The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. Editing of our podcast recordings is done by Sienna Butler, and our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.